KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. Just as a reminder, you can follow us on both Instagram and Facebook. Just look for Viewpoint with Father John. And I do get the messages that people send to me through those platforms, and I appreciate the fact that you follow the show there and give me your feedback. It's really kind of neat. And also, I am on Twitter at Father John Reed, and Father is spelled out, and Reed is the proper Irish R-E-I-D. Anything less would be uncivilized. And if you miss an episode, you can go to YouTube and just in the search bar put Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you get all 4 years of the back episodes. I can't believe that 2 weeks ago we celebrated 4 years of this show being on the air, and I guess the manager still hasn't gotten the code to the lock over here, so he can't kick me out of the studio yet, so that's pretty good. So, all of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I'd like to tell you about the best pharmacy in Southern California, which is Claremont Pharmacy, where you believe it or not, they are located in Claremont. My goodness. On the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. That's where I get all my pharmaceutical needs. Pharmaceuticals, huh? I guess I'm having a problem. I'll get some gas X. And pharmaceutical needs. You know, you give me a week off and you got to retrain me when I come back. And sorry about that, Dr. Nikki. A little squeak between the two of us. But anyhow, they take care of all my diabetic needs and such. And if you really want good old-fashioned service where they know you by your name and really care about you, go see Claremont Pharmacy. Tell them Father John sent you. You will really be glad he did. And for the best DJ services this side of the Mississippi, you want to go to lakesidedjservices.com. That's our Frank buddy over here working the sound booth on us. And he also has his photo booth, clothing optional. And but you have to at least bring a towel. In some cases, probably a crying towel. But Frank does have the best DJ service. He does weddings, he does funerals, he does receptions, bar mitzvahs, and quinceañeras, whatever you need done. The best part of it is he does what you want to have done. So you don't have someone coming in and telling you the music you're going to have. He comes in, listens to what it is that your needs are, and takes good care of you. So remember, that's lakesidedjservices.com. And again, I want to tell you about my friend Glenn Kirshner with Justice Matters. That's a YouTube channel. Glenn and I are good friends. He's federal prosecutor for 25 years and was a captain in the United States Army as a prosecutor in the JAG Corps. And if you want straight up legal stuff going on, he's the real deal. He doesn't put a spin going either way on it. He tells you how it is, and I'm honored to call him a friend. And I also support what he's doing. So the YouTube is free, but there's another platform. I'm really having trouble tonight.
It's okay. Spit it
out. That you can support what he's doing because it's an all-volunteer thing. But I'll let him tell you about that when you go to YouTube. But you'll be glad you went because you'll see that he is a straight shooter, and I really appreciate Glenn for that. And he, like I say, he's been a dear friend and been following me for a while. A little shout out, thanks to a lot of people who've been praying for me. I did have the surgery last week, and so they think they got all the cancer out of my forehead. It's a rather aggressive one. It was a lot deeper than they thought. They had to go in twice in the same day. But I'm back with you. I'm still, and some people are going to think it's a joke, I'm very, very serious. I'm still having a little trouble forming some of the words. For some reason, it's affecting that. And I don't know if it's because of the dementia or what, but I've been struggling. But I'm down to wearing a Band-Aid instead of these compresses, so that's real. They've been calling me around the place Frankenstitches. All these stitches, it's really something else. So I thank you for your prayers. I really believe prayers do a great thing. If nothing else, they certainly lift my spirit and give me the strength to just get up and have a little humor about what's going on. I'm very excited to have a dear friend of mine on the show tonight. His name's Frank Hennessy. And Frank, we joke back and forth, has a minor in meditation, a major in acceptance.
Acceptance.
And we're going to talk a little bit about acceptance tonight, and hopefully we'll clarify a few things, that there's a difference between acceptance and apathy. Those are two different things. And what acceptance means, that it's not just a one-time deal, but my experience has been it's a progressive thing, back and forth, back and forth. And so with no further ado, Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm so glad to be here again. It's lovely. This topic, like I've mentioned to you before, has been just like my whole thing for the past 10, 15 years. And part of it was, being in recovery and stuff like that, you get to have, and especially the codependency recovery, you get to see how much you really don't accept reality.
Right.
I'm reminded of that T-shirt. It said, "Reality is for people who can't handle drugs," or something to that effect. But I'm always got to be funny too. That's another part. But it's interesting. Where I grew up in a typical East Coast Irish Catholic family, and my parents, it was like they didn't accept me as I was. They tried to form me into what they thought I should be, because that's exactly what happened to them too. I mean, so they had a lack of self-acceptance too, and that does horrible things to self-esteem, and it does horrible things to self-worth and self-image. And so you end up using that as a tool, this lack of acceptance, in other words, denial, or just apathy like you're talking about, or just putting up with everything. And it's tough. It really, especially if you have any kind of intelligence at all. And unfortunately, all the people in my family are very bright. My mom used to call me son. No, anyway, got Frank's attention over there. It's all good.
I think son's clotting the issues now.
Oh, look out now. There we go. We're in it. Oh, hailstorm. No. But it's an amazing thing. I never felt enough. I never felt like I was enough. And when you're taught to believe that this is how it's got to be, we were Catholic before it was fun to be Catholic.
Right.
And we talked about that in September of 18 when I was here last.
Right.
I brought up about
Baltimore
back then,
Catechism, yeah.
They'd smack you in the head and, all kind of good stuff. And it was tough. It was really tough. And these people that were teaching also had problems. That same structured kind of, this is how you have to be. We're Catholics. We do this. We don't do that. And blah, 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 And meanwhile, they're all doing the stuff they're saying not to do.
Right.
But behind closed doors.
Right. And
so you find out about that hypocrisy. And it's just, and it brought to mind a story. I was thinking about this on the drive over here today. My dad, both my parents and my grandfather who lived with us all smoked cigarettes. Mm. And so, needless to say, at like 12 years old, I started smoking cigarettes, and as did my brother, who was 13 months younger than me. And they didn't want us to smoke because we were too young. Meanwhile, they're smoking.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'm already addicted to cigarettes because I've been living in secondhand smoke all my life, right?
Right.
So it's like, and I'll never forget, my dad got so frustrated with my brother Tom and I, he caught us smoking again. He actually whooped us and then lit a cigarette. And talk about mess a little boy's mind up. And that was just a tiny bit of the hypocrisy and stuff that went on. And, through looking back at it and taking, really close look, uncover, discovering, and discarding thing, I could see that, this was the tools he had, and he was really doing the absolute best he was capable of. But it wasn't very good. So
right.
I had to learn, first off, that I am enough, and excuse me, there's a form of insanity where you keep making the same mistake over and over again, looking for a different result.
Right.
Well, I kept seeing things as not enough, and I kept trying to make them enough, although they were already enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
The reality is that this shirt is perfectly okay. I don't need to have your shirt because you look cooler in your shirt than I do, or whatever.
It's
that kind of
a gift.
silly thing. Yeah, I know. We're on it tonight, Frank. But, but anyway, it's so funny. It's my perception of reality just wasn't there. I mean, it was just not existent. Everything was in my head, and I'm sure you can relate with this. I know I wake up in the morning and my brain's sitting up on the bed headboard saying, you should hear what we thought about last night. This is going to be a bad day for you and all this kind of stuff. I think you told me this one time.
Yeah,
and it's
head
like,
attack.
Yeah, head attack. Yes, that's exactly. And, I have thoughts that have thoughts and have thoughts. And it's like, come on, please. And how do you get out of that? Well, that's where meditation, the minor in meditation comes from.
Right.
That really does help. But what also helps with meditation, as far as acceptance is concerned, is that you're working on keeping those thoughts out of your head, and you get to be in the now, which is the really true reality, I think,
Yes.
we have. And I'm sure you've led meditations as I have too, and it's just amazing that you get there, and it's so hard to stay there, because this stuff is so persistent in our minds, the way that we're I don't know if it's a defects of character or whatever, but you spend enough time practicing lack of acceptance, you're not going to accept very much, and then learning it is what I've tried to do over the past 10 or so years. So, yeah.
Well, part of what you're describing, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you're describing the difference between facts and feelings. The facts were you are enough. The feelings are saying something else. And feelings aren't the one to be trusted, but when that's all you have, and you've been taught to always go with your feelings, that's a big thing in America, go with your gut feeling. Well, sometimes the gut's wrong. And I had an experience with that when I was teaching at the police academy down in Mexicali. And a member of my parish board was a retired DEA agent. And we're at this Christmas concert, and he knew I was about to go down for the Day of the Police, which is January 1st in Mexicali, Mexico. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, be careful. What I heard him saying is you don't know how to handle yourself, which is not what he said. And I looked at him and said, Wayne, do you think I'm an idiot? And he looked totally shocked. He says, Father John, you're one of the smartest people I've ever known. I just want you to be careful because I know what's going on down there, that, it's bad news right now. And that was the first time it clicked that I was hearing something different than what was being said because I couldn't separate the feelings from the facts.
I hear you. Well, and there's another flip side to that is, have you ever heard, don't get angry about that? Or you don't feel that way. Or,
Yeah.
What are you crying about? You want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about. That kind of a thing. And so you're actually pummeled away from your feelings. I read something recently. It said unconditional acceptance does not depend on your external circumstances, nor your success or achievements, which is
Right.
all outside. It's unconditional acceptance is inside. And, it's funny, I use a thing for when I meet new people, that we're going to accept you exactly like you are. And nobody's ever done that to you, have they? And they're going like, whoa. Because that's what happened to me first time I got into recovery, was that these people accepted me without asking me my FICA score, didn't want to see what car I was driving, didn't care what I was dressed like or whatever. I was just a kin spirit.
Right.
And so they said, well, come on and join us because we're the same. And they accepted me. It was probably the first time in my life at 29 years old that I really felt accepted and in parentheses loved.
Right.
Because I think that if you have unconditional acceptance of somebody, how could you be more loving for somebody without unconditional? And look at, every belief about God. God takes me exactly as I am. I don't have to fix anything. I don't have to do anything. I just have to be me.
Right.
in the image of this God. And if I'm really trying to be in the image of that God, I'm going to start trying to accept people like they are. And it's a phenomenal thing. I've been married 4 times. You know my wife, Barbara. She's a lovely
Yes.
woman. We've been married for 22 years, which is so unrealistic in my whole script. I mean, I should not have been married this long.
Well, it's almost illegal in
It
California.
absolutely is. Well, and what's interesting is she's been married 3 times. And if you add up all our previous hostage takings or practice husbands and wives, it doesn't add up to 22 years.
Right.
But because we accept each other exactly as we are, now my wife still likes to make me change shirts and whatever, but that's silly. But she accepts it. I'm this 70-year-old guy that lives with her that has these different health situations, which is okay. I've lived a long time and I've beat it. I mean, I've gone up against the wall too many times, but and I'm perfectly okay. It's amazing. I have so many different. I don't even go into the illnesses, AFib, and all this other stuff. But I just accept them. And so what I do when I accept them is I get treated for them, and I don't have to sit around feeling sorry for myself because I'm sick. And it's like
Right.
a lot of people do that, and that's that out of reality thing. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of reality, Frank's
yeah.
looking at me like I better go to commercial, or he's going to give me a fresh piece of reality. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. My guest this evening is Frank Hennessy. But before we go to Frank Hennessy, I want to welcome our friend in the sound booth, Luce, that's joining us with Frank, our sound engineer, and she's seeing how the operation goes, and I didn't know that you were a surgeon, but that's okay. He's quick with a knife. But anyhow, Frank, good to be back. We took a week off last week because he had something he had to do, and I had a medical procedure, but it's back to be, how's that old song with Willie Nelson, Together Again. So anyhow, my guest this evening is Frank Hennessy, and we're talking about acceptance. And I think that is one of the least understood topics in the American culture. In America, we're human doers, not human beings. And that's a big problem. That came over with our ancestors who were the Puritans that taught work, and really help create a society that's not very healthy, because if you're not working, then what value do you have? And so, and if you don't have value, how can you accept yourself?
Absolutely.
So.
I agree completely. You know, it's interesting you say that. It's funny. I didn't do when I was younger. I didn't make my bed every day, and I would not necessarily wear clean clothes every day. And brushing teeth was a hit and miss kind of thing. But I would always have cigarettes, of course, and coffee and other liquids. But it's funny that once I started looking at that and realizing that the only way to get self-esteem, this is my opinion, it can be anybody else's, is by doing esteemable acts.
Right.
What a concept. And then the other thing is taking responsibility for my own choices.
Right.
One
right.
of the things our buddy Fernando
Yeah,
Ortega and I
right.
used to talk about codependency being trying to take the consequences for somebody else's choices, which just rang so true because I've spent so many years doing that with young ladies that I absolutely had to be involved with, right?
Sure.
The reality
God's
was,
will.
yeah, reality was we were doing a mutual hostage situation, you know, based on defects, and it was like, what reality? There's no reality, you know, and it's amazing today that, you know, I still have all those, you know, looking at the girls and all that good stuff that happens. But today I just don't give it much credence, you know. And one of the interesting things, I heard this at a meeting, and it was a young person said it, said, I just learned that acceptance doesn't mean approval. Well, duh, you know. And a lot of people confuse acceptance with you have to like what's going on. I don't have to like the state of the nation. I can, with our good old serenity prayer, you know, I accept the things I can't change and change the things I can.
Right.
But how do you know that? And that's where intuition comes in, I think. And that, segueing back to meditation, that wisdom comes from pursuing that, you know, that, what is it they say, that prayer is talking to God and meditating is listening?
Yes.
I've seen that so many times where I'll have an issue and I just can't figure out, should I fix it or should I not fix it? But in meditation, I just like leave it, and then I leave it go, and it seems like you come out of the meditation and, wow, oh, I need to do this to take care of that, you know? And what a concept for a street kid like me from South Philadelphia to be able to accept, first off, accept responsibility for my own stuff. Yeah, right. You know, I'm a what do you call it, a hustler and a bustler. You know, I mean, I'm out there
Yeah.
trying to make everybody else pay for it or whatever. But, you know, and I've been in sales now for 40 years, and I've learned that you don't have to be full of crap to be a sales guy.
That's right.
I'm of service. I have people love my service. And it's like, I learned that just by learning that being of service is a very esteemable act, if you think about it.
You know, our mutual friend Chuck Chamberlain taught me about that. That I didn't go out to sell anything. I went out to help you if I can, and if I can't, you're busy, so am I. And in early college days, I had a lot of sales job. I sell texture coating and vinyl siding and roofing sometimes. And I would come in with the best leads, with the most sales, and they used to ask what the secret was. I said, I don't go out to sell anything. I go to help them if I can, and if I can't, they're busy, so am I. And the people knew it when I was talking to them, because they know if it's a con job or if you really mean what you're saying. And that's why, you know, I could qualify people. They're on the doorstep. I was the guy who went door to door, you know, and
Oh, I've been there.
canvassing. Yeah.
I've been there, yes.
So I say it to let you know I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
You are bringing integrity, because the real product is the integrity. The other just happens to be the tag along.
It's the relationships, you know,
Right.
and you, if you're caring and sincere about what you're doing for people, people know that. And
Yes.
that's, you know, it's another case of acceptance. If you think about it, I accept that you have this need, and I'm not going to force something down your throat that you don't need. And I even learned that, you know, if I can't take care of it, I'll find somebody that can for you. And boy, talk about return customers, right?
Yeah.
So I've been, you know, for the past 15 years, I've been successfully keeping this one huge corporate account for our company that I run. And the whole deal is all about service. I've let people go that couldn't do service because I let them know up front, this is about choices. If you choose not to do it the way I'd like you to do it, here's the consequence for that. You know, and it's amazing when I'm letting them go, we're friendly because, hey, wasn't my choice, it was your choice. So here's the consequences. But for people to accept that, I've got a consequence for my choices, and that every choice has a consequence. And not making a choice is making a choice, which will have a
Right.
consequence. I mean, whoa, it's like almost overwhelming. But the good news is if you think about our buddy Shane
Yeah.
talks about making snap decisions, which are actually throwing a hand grenade into the future.
Yes.
You're walking along and all of a sudden your knees get blown off and you're like, oh, how did that happen? Well, 2 months ago you decided to do this, this, and this, and now it's finally come back on you. And I choose not to blow up anymore.
Well, yeah, and that's really important information to have, because there are many people walking around that do not have that information. No one shared that with them, because we have a culture that always says, find someone to be responsible for what happened, and don't let that be you. Because I always found if I admit that it was my mistake, it's pretty easy to get to a solution, but it's hard to get to a solution when I'm trying to find someone else to blame for it.
And a lot of things cause you to feel that way. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm weak. And for guys, I mean, we're tough, we're the
Right.
the protector and all that. And
Might is right.
Yeah, and women, I mean, I'm going to find somebody to take care of me. Like, yo, where's your brain at? And I have a friend, Joan, who's sober 51 years. She's an amazing lady, right? And she talks about when she was young, that the whole deal was trying to find the right guy. And, love didn't matter that much. It was just finding the guy that was going to let her have babies and do this picket fence and all these ideas about how reality is supposed to be.
Right.
It's not reality, and it's there's a lot of aspects about reality that people get into denial, and they have regrets, and they have expectations, and they have guilt, and they judge people. If you're judging someone, you're not in reality, my book.
Yes.
If you're in denial, you're not in reality. If you're guilty about something you did last week, it's not reality. Today is not happening with that. If you're expecting something to come down, not reality. The Buddhists have it pretty cool. It's like no desire, no attachment. But
Yes.
that's good for the Buddhist. I'm still going to have some attachment and some desire, but I don't let it rule my life today. And I try to make informed decisions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to accept stuff when you think it through. There's a little thing I use about our kind of people and our decision-making ability. And there's two kinds of decisions. There's rat decisions and Rita decisions. A rat decision is where you react, then act, then think.
Right.
So like you see this guy drives up in a Corvette and you say, oh, I really like that. And you go get one, and then you think about, how am I going to pay for this? This is my whole mortgage payment, right?
Right.
That's a rat decision. Rita is you react, you go, oh, look at a cool Corvette. And then you ask the guy, well, what's it cost? And he says, well, it's this, this, and this. And you think, whew, I can't do that. So you go out and buy a Volkswagen. That's a Rita decision. That's thinking it through is the thing, the investigating and thinking before the action. What a concept, huh?
Well, also that I think we get part of that from thinking that something outside of us is going to make us feel good, feel okay. I've often given the analogy that when we're born, we come out of the womb, the doctor cuts the umbilical cord, but instead of letting it fall and die naturally, we grab onto it and start trying to plug it into people. You're going to make me feel secure. You're going to make me feel supported. You're going to make me feel handsome. And at some point, with the proper acceptance, we have to cut the umbilical cord and let it take its process and realize that we're not going to find it out there. That's why we don't have the umbilical cord.
I got an inner. I totally know what you mean. No, the bottom line is that once again, that's thinking that something else can take care of your insides, and it
Right.
just doesn't happen. It's amazing to me. I've, addictions run through my family: drug addiction, food addiction, sex addiction, alcohol addiction, and part of what happens with addiction is your connection is made to the wrong higher power, for lack of a better word. You're
That
wrong.
works.
You're wrong God, if you will. You make the addiction your God. You connect with that.
Right.
And you have to stay connected when you're addicted, because God forbid you should stop. You'll have to feel pain, and
Mercy.
that dilemma thing, it's like, is it going to be more painful to stop or more painful to keep going? And that happens a lot. So when you do have that final moment where you can break out and you can do a change of connection, if you can find a way to connect to reality, which is, oh, I've got this, and I have to do this to make it stop being such a, I'm not going to, I've lost my job, my wife, my car. I'm kind of tired of that. I'd like to have a wife, a car, and a house, And you get connected to people that are doing the same thing. And so now you can hang out with people like that and hear them say how they've done it. And if you're not too busy thinking about what you need to do next week or the differences or whatever, you're judging it. If you just listen and identify, our friend Terry talks about comparison isn't spiritual, identification is.
Yes.
And that is so, when I heard him say that, it was a retreat we were at. When I heard him say that, I was like, dang, that is it. We don't, if we're comparing, we're judging.
Yes.
Where's the reality at? There's no reality with that, so. That's a big deal for me. That reality thing is just, and it's hard. It's not an easy thing. It takes a lot of practice to really get into reality.
Yes.
I have I was going somewhere with Joe Matthews. Joe, and I was in my little Miata sports car, which I don't have anymore. But I was in my little Miata sports car, and I had silver wheels on the Miata, and I'd seen a Miata with black wheels. And I thought, wow, that's really slick, right? And
Yeah.
I shopped it all up. It's going to be $1,500 to get these wheels. And I'm driving with Joe, and I said, Joe, I just had an epiphany. He says, what? I says, I can't see my wheels. He says, of course you're driving your car. I said, I know, but why am I going to pay $1,500 for wheels I can't see?
Right.
Boom, boom, ba-dum, boom. I never did get black tires. I have wheels on that one.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? It's just backing out of this kind of stuff. And it's interesting, the people that we know that we've looked up to, the Ray Goodmans and the Eddie Cochrans and stuff, these guys accepted themselves as they were almost completely. And
Yes.
I had heard somewhere that genuine humility is defined as total acceptance of yourself exactly as you are right now.
My brother Bob says something I really love. He says, if I'm no big deal, it's no big deal.
Bang, that's awesome. That is very cool. Yeah.
He constantly reminds me of that. We text every morning, just to remind each other that we're loved.
There you go. Oh,
And
nice.
and sometimes, this surgery, he said, just remember, if I'm no big deal, it's no big deal. Just got to keep that in mind.
You get through anything.
Get through anything.
It's interesting. I had about almost 2 years ago now, a hiatal hernia surgery.
Yes.
What do they call it? Orthoscopic, where they put a bunch of sticks in, and
Yeah.
the guy sits over at a desk and does a joystick when he does it. Yeah. But
Knit and pearl, yeah.
I wasn't, it was funny. It was the first time I knew I had to get it fixed. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a situation like that where I was absolutely not worried. That no matter what happened, I got this. And what a concept. That's probably the most esteemable thing I've ever felt, was being able to not be afraid.
Yes.
Fear comes from all the different imaginations and stuff. It's not reality, and now we're never going to be fearless. I even like to say, well, I'm not really afraid when I'm driving, I'm cautious. If somebody stops really fast behind me, I'm afraid. There goes the neck, but yeah. So it's an interesting concept. And, I think it all starts with just looking at what you don't accept about yourself.
Right.
And, journaling or inventory work or talking with a good therapist.
Yes.
You
Highly
can't,
recommended.
I don't know that you can solve a problem without the awareness of what it is. It's not a problem till you have awareness of it.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the word fear. In my book, I give 3 acronyms for it. One is false evidence appearing real, forget everything and run, face everything and recover.
Love that.
And it's okay to have fear. The pain comes in when we try to pretend we don't have the fear. And there's the judgment again. something that Mother Teresa says that I absolutely adore is when you judge somebody, you don't have time to love them.
I so agree with that. Absolutely.
And I think that has to do with everything in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really agree. If you're judging, you're not loving. It's how can you? It's interesting. All these people that spend all this money on great weddings and everything like that, and the gender reveals on the babies and all this other stuff. They're seeking attention, and the reason they're doing it is because they're not okay with themselves.
Exactly right.
This is just my opinion, an observation, not a judgment. But the bottom line is, all these people that I know that have gone through these huge weddings. Barbara and I paid $167 to be married at the Candlelight Chapel in Las Vegas, and we're married 22 years.
Yeah.
We didn't have to have limos and all the other stuff that goes along with weddings. And yet I've been to 4 weddings in the past 10 years that were huge gala events, and not one of the 4 are still married. And I don't know if it's how it works, but that's just the observation. So anyway, accepting reality, yeah.
I'm doing a deal now where, pay for the first wedding and the next one's half off.
Yes.
I'm giving group deals. Hey, speaking about fear, I have fear that Frank's going to reach through that window and smack me a couple times if we don't go to commercial. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. Shout out to the listeners around the world. I've been getting some more messages, particularly out of Brazil and Philippines. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And some of you have been writing to ask how I'm feeling and sharing with me I'm on your prayer list. And I will be honest, it blows me away when I'm getting letters from people from other countries that are either tuning in online or catching the show on YouTube. And I want you to know I'm really honored because you can listen to anybody, and the fact that you allow me to share some of this love with you. My friend Chamberlain used to say, love is a divine paradox. When you go out to get, you come back empty. When you go out to give, you come back overflowing. So you're allowing me to have a life that's overflowing with love. And so I am deeply grateful to you, and I mean that with all sincerity. During the break, Frank Hennessy and I were talking about a misconception, I think, sometimes with acceptance is when you accept something, you don't have feelings about it. And I find that to not be true. So you want to talk about that, Frank?
Sure. Well, it's like the acceptance doesn't mean approval, but it also doesn't mean that the reality of your situation isn't hurtful. I mean, if you
Right.
lose somebody that's close to you, you're impossible not to feel the loss, and the Kubler-Ross method, the 5 things, what is it? Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance.
Right.
And you can't circumvent those 4 things. That's the reality of grief. It's going to have its way with you, but at the same time, if you're an accepting person and you accept the reality, you're not going to devastate the rest of your life because the puppy died at 16 years old.
Right.
And I've seen that where people are just so devastated by their attachment to something. Attachment's not reality. We don't own anybody or any animal or anything. I mean, life is all about dying eventually, but it's never fun. I mean, and getting hurt in a car accident, how do you accept that? I mean, you don't just go, oh, look, I got hurt. You're going to feel pain because
Right.
the body feels pain. Accepting that pain helps to heal, I believe. And it also helps you to be, if you're accepting the reality of how you got hurt, if your leg's broken, you go get a cast put on it.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, it's not that bad, I'll just limp around for a while. Because, think about it. How many times have you heard people do that?
Yes.
I watched a guy, I remember I was working at the Holiday Inn when I was first out of high school, and this cook complained every day for like a week about his stomach hurting so bad, so bad, so bad, right? And at work, he died from a burst appendix because he was afraid of going to the doctor. That simple bit of reality, when you're hurt that bad, I don't care how you were taught to feel, or what you think the outside circumstances are, get it fixed. Otherwise, look at the consequence of that choice.
And pain's not necessarily bad. It's our warning light that something needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. I agree with that completely. And people, look at how much drug use is going in, the opioid thing. I had a friend, my buddy Mike, he used to say I would take a Percocet, or no, what was the other one? Vicodin. I would take a Vicodin in the morning thinking I would feel pain that day. And I was like, and it's like so silly. I mean, but that's the kind of mentality that people have. Fix it from the outside.
Exactly. I had a friend who was a physician who got hooked on drugs, and he said, I never took a drug for anything I didn't either have or thought I might be coming down with.
I absolutely. You know what? And it's that brings up the point about thought and about how quickly our untrained thinking, or the thinking that we were trained to have as young people.
Right.
Because I was taught to think a lot. Back to my friend Fernando. I'm going to have to make him look this up on YouTube because I've shouted out now twice. But we talk about these family scripts that we get, and we look through these scripts to live our life.
Yes.
I mean, I remember one time when my son Michael, who's now like almost 44, he was doing something, and my first impulse was to smack him on the back of his head. And I was like, damn, I'm channeling my grandfather and my father. And I realized it, and I stopped, and it was like that little moment of clarity that we
Yes.
get. And, I accepted. One of the biggest acceptance that I ever got was, your life is as important to you as mine is to me. And if you can really understand that, you'll never go out and buy a gun. You won't beat up the dog. You won't beat the wife. All that kind of stuff, because you don't feel good. You're going to hit somebody else. Give me a break. Your martial arts thing, that's more of a science and more of a healthy thing to do. But some people just don't do the healthy thing.
Well, even with it, in the style I was taught, you didn't go against force. You went in the direction it went in, and you just simply became for it to pass through.
Exactly.
And so you're not doing it out of anger.
Yep.
It's just as much as I don't want to let you hurt you either.
Yeah.
And that's a hard concept to understand. That's why it takes a lot of years to become a black belt, because up until then, you probably didn't quite get it yet. Now, I know there's a lot of underbelts a lot of color belts are saying, oh, what is it? No, there's a reason why it takes so many years before you get that black belt. You talking about sons, my son came up to me one time. Now, my son served the altar as my altar boy for years. And when he turned 18, he was 17, I take it back. He said, Dad, would you be upset if I became a Buddhist? I said, son, no, wherever you're hearing it. And I showed him my bookies. I said, I have some great books on Buddhism. Avail yourself, whatever I can do to help. whatever you feel relationship with, that is your path, and God's big enough.
Boy, that's amazing, because you know what? I always thought there was something wrong with the teachings I had. You know, the Catholic catechism stuff that they had for us back then. And the fact that, you know, you had to memorize it and spout it off like, you know, it was just like singing propaganda, you know. And when I read about the Tao was the first thing that I saw that really just started opening my mind up.
Right.
And
Good
then
stuff.
then I got into Buddhism, and if I had to be classified with a label, which is really kind of silly, but if I had to be classified with a label, I'm a Buddhist. I'm not a Catholic anymore. And it's just the mentality that I have, because it's not really a religion, you know, it's a spirituality. And in fact, the Buddha says that if you don't like anything that we're teaching you, don't pay attention. And I'm like, whoa, you know, how wonderful is that, you know?
I like what you said about the title. You know, our mutual friend Chuck used to say, if you were to ask me what my religion is, I'd have to say it's the way I live my life. Doesn't matter what I call myself. The way I live my life tells you everything about what I believe. And I think if we spent less time, again, this is just my opinion, but I'm right. If we spent less time labeling and more time experiencing, I think we would discover, and that's the great thing of any faith, is discovery, that it's all connected. We're just talking about, well, do you want to call it this or do you want to call it that? Which is really silly, because if you could define it, you sure don't understand it.
If you think about it, when people do that, when they do that defining thing, then they set up a set of classifications.
Right.
And so now you're totally out of luck with these people, because they've got you classified based on what they think you are. And it's like, seriously, you know, I know we're running out of time here a little bit, but one of the things I thought about just recently was paradoxes.
Yes.
It was one of the morning daily reflections or something like that, and we were talking about it. And the paradox of giving to receive, loving to be loved, you know, forgiving to be forgiven, doesn't make sense if you're looking at it from a critical mind.
Right.
But if you've done it and you've accepted it's the reality of how our world works, all of a sudden you're like getting more than you've ever thought you'd get. You're being loved more than you've ever been loved, and you're being forgiven for all the stuff, you know. And it's just a phenomenal thing. I know that part of this whole path has to start with the path to acceptance.
Yes.
Has to start the self-acceptance, especially with forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and dealing with the stuff you've done, you know,
Right.
i.e. the amends process, you know. If you can clear the slate, it makes such a great thing. You know, if you take that endeavor, I'll tell you this quick story. I have a flute. I got it in 1972 at the Swarthmore, Pennsylvania music store. I rented it.
Cool.
And I moved to California and never paid for it, but kept the flute. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time, but that was called stealing a flute.
Yes.
Okay? Well, I've had this flute for all these years, and we're talking 50 years now, right?
Right.
And we were talking about amends, me and some friends the other day. I went, geez, Louise, I've never made amends for this flute. And so, of course, now we're 50 years later, right? I look up the name of the guy that had the store, which isn't there any longer. And then I looked him up on the internet and found his son's name, right? And I called to make amends because I wanted to take care of this.
Yes.
He answered the phone. The older gentleman, 92-year-old Scottish man who teaches bagpipe. Go figure.
Well, there's
And
forgiveness for all.
I proceeded to tell him about stealing this flute and about how I'm really sorry and how can I make up for it. I'll send him money or whatever. He says, you don't have to send me money. I am just so grateful that there's good people left in the world. And I mean, God bumps automatically. It was just so perfect. And that's the stuff about being willing to take the responsibility for yourself.
And both people are freed by it.
Absolutely. And my flute sounds better than it ever sounded before.
You know, there's truth to that, though, because part of what was blocking a portion of the music was now removed.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't think we're not connected spiritually, we have shown through science the pattern of connectability between, it's not the word I'm looking for.
I know what you're talking, connectiveness,
Yes,
perhaps.
and that we actually do have energy that reaches out and touches. And it affects plant life and all kinds of things. And so being present, I love The Power of Now.
Oh, yeah.
And
one of my favorite.
But there's another book I want to suggest that's really good. It's about Meister Eckhart called Life of Paradox.
Mm.
And all life is paradox. And he, his stuff wasn't allowed to be published for years. And anyone who's worth reading has been in trouble with the Vatican, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Hattie DeMello,
Yeah,
Thomas Merton,
Yep.
Thomas Keating.
Yeah.
And, let me go back to that for just one second. We still have a few minutes, because I think this comes into some of this. We started out talking a little bit about the meditation and reality and the letting go of thoughts, but the thoughts coming in. And Thomas Keating was teaching at a retreat, centering prayer, meditation. And during the break, a nun came up to him, really frustrated. She says, "Father, I just can't seem to get this right. I had to restart 1,000 times because the thoughts," he says, "how wonderful, you had 1,000 opportunities to try again to be present."
Wow. How cool is that, huh?
And when I can accept myself that this is what's happening, and then use whatever my centering word is that I'm using to bring me back, and learn to love that part of me too, that's a breakthrough for me.
Yeah.
Meditation is not necessarily for me to make me feel good, it's to make me aware.
And like we said, awareness is how you get to
Yes.
change. You can't fix something you're not aware of. It's like,
Or that you can't accept.
absolutely. And if you can accept it, what's going on? Are you judging it? Are you being told to have the second-hand knowledge? Isn't that lovely when you judge somebody you've never even met because, and what's the Herbert Spencer line? The virtue of ignorance is contempt prior to investigation. I mean, I lived my life that way. My mother said it wasn't good, so I can't have it.
Yeah, I'm good at judging people who just walk by.
Seriously, I get that. But yeah, no, it's an interesting topic, that's for sure. And I've noticed that the more I practice it, the better choices I make, the happier people are with me. And I never thought I'd get there. And you know what? And once again, the paradox: life is to die. And we're going to do something the dash in between, isn't it? It's something like that on the gravestone. But I'm trying to make it a good dash, and hopefully it stays that way for a while.
I received a good barometer on this a while back. Our mutual friend Tom W. was talking to Terry R., and the topic I'm going to clean up, of jerk, came up. Tom likes to, he's good at that.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's talking to Terry about it, and Terry says, well, in the course of your day, if you run across a jerk, they're out there, so what? You ran into a jerk. However, in the course of your day, if you run across 4 jerks or more, you're the jerk. And I take that this is my barometer. If I'm finding that I'm really judgmental of other people, I've learned, and this is a recent discovery, to stop and ask, okay, what am I upset about inside me? What's going on that I'm deflecting and saying this person, who I don't even know?
Absolutely.
And I realize, okay, I'm upset with something in me that I need to look at so I can let it go. Because letting go is actually acceptance.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy? The divine paradox again.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying about the, and I just spaced it out as I thought about it, but, the judging people. I have to have a base of something in me to judge you to be. If I judge that you're a jerk, I have to have some knowledge of what jerks are.
Yes.
So I'm judging you based on my knowledge of what I am. It's really, what's that thing, point one finger through or pointing back? It's like, whoa,
Yeah, one up.
One up. Hopefully, yeah. Anyway.
Well, we're in our last moment. And
Okay.
Frank, it's been a real delight having you back. And
My pleasure.
We'll have to do it sooner again before not so many years, but
You betcha.
now we're getting to where we can meet again in person.
Sure.
And folks, again, my guest this evening has been my dear friend Frank Hennessy. We've known each other a lot of years.
Long time,
Loved
my
you a
friend.
long time, my friend.
Yes. Back
And,
at you.
And for those of you tuning in, if no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And I thank you for tuning in. Because if you didn't tune in, this show absolutely wouldn't matter. And so you make it matter. And well, I'm just grateful that once again you've allowed me into your home. I promise I didn't take any of the silverware this time. And we'll be back next week. Till then, be well.